Hey guys, tonight we begin with a thought that hums quietly through history. What if the Library of Alexandria never burned? Take a deep breath. Let the noise of the day fall away. Picture a coastline wrapped in night. Waves breathing against stone docks, torches glimmering along a marble causeway. Somewhere ahead, 1,000 lamps shimmer behind tall columns. That glow is knowledge itself, alive and unbroken. You step closer. The scent of salt, papyrus, and olive oil drifts in the air. Scribes move like shadows across a courtyard, arms filled with scrolls tied in colored ribbon. They whisper in Greek, Egyptian, and Persian. Languages woven together by curiosity, not conquest. You hear a fountain, steady and slow, echoing against polished stone. Welcome to Alexandria in the 2nd century, BCE, a city where traders, poets, and astronomers share the same streets. Ships from Rhodes, India, and Carthage lie anchored in the grey harbour, their sails folded like sleeping wings. Above them rises the Pharos, the lighthouse whose beam turns the sea to silver. And just inland, beyond gardens of date palm and myrtle, stands the heart of this world, the Museum, the Temple of the Muses, home to the Great Library. Inside, the air is cool and dry. Hundreds of alcoves line the walls, each stacked with scrolls written on papyrus or sheepskin. Scholars wander softly, candles cupped in their hands, eyes still bright despite the hour. Some debate the motion of planets, others compare translations of old Indian mathematics. A young woman sketches the human heart from memory, her charcoal tracing secrets long before anatomy books will exist. In our history, flames will one day erase these moments. But not tonight, not in this world. Tonight the scrolls remain untouched, their edges glowing in lamplight like threads of gold. You can hear the rustle of parchment, the scrape of a stylus, the hush of ideas taking shape. A gentle voice calls across the hall. Another shipment has arrived from Athens. Boxes open, releasing the smell of cedar and ink. One scribe lifts a new scroll, a lost dialogue of Socrates, copied by careful hands. They mark its origin, index its topic, slide it into its alcove. Knowledge doesn't just survive here, it multiplies. Step through the next corridor. A circular chamber opens around you, ceiling painted with constellations. Eratosthenes himself once measured the earth from this very city, watching shadows at noon to guess the planet's curve. In this world, he will refine his calculations again and again until sailors trust mathematics more than myth. Outside, dawn glows faintly over the harbour. Fishermen light their nets, and the first gulls call above the masts. The library never sleeps. It breathes with the rhythm of the sea. Each sunrise brings new minds. Philosophers from Athens, monks from distant India, engineers from Nubia carrying blueprints for machines that pump water from the Nile. You find a quiet corner and sit beside an open window. Warm air slides in, carrying distant laughter from the markets below. On the desk before you lies a half-translated treatise on steam pressure. In our timeline, it would become a curiosity, forgotten for centuries. Here, it will change everything. Picture artisans shaping bronze cylinders, craftsmen bending thin sheets into valves and pistons. The first small engine puffs softly, turning a wheel. Children gather around, eyes wide. No one calls it magic, only progress. As days turn to decades, the library becomes more than a building. It is a heartbeat that sends knowledge outward in waves. Messengers cross deserts with bundles of copies wrapped in linen. Students memorize formulas, poetry, and anatomy, then sail home to teach. The world grows connected by invisible threads of learning. At night, the scholars return to their rooms above the colonnade. From their windows, they can see the lighthouse beams sweep across the bay, a slow pulse of light. Some write letters to colleagues in far-off lands, notes about new stars, new cures, new philosophies, and the answers always come back. No idea is lost to silence. Imagine living in a time when curiosity itself is sacred, when the search for truth is worship. In the temples of Egypt, priests bless not warriors, but mathematicians. Children learn geometry beside hymns. Sailors carry astronomy charts next to their maps of trade winds. Close your eyes for a moment. Listen to the rhythm of waves against the quay. The city smells of honey cakes, oil, and parchment dust. Somewhere, a student laughs softly at a new discovery. This is the sound of a world that never forgot how to wonder. And as you breathe slowly, let that world unfold further. In a few minutes, we'll step beyond Alexandria's harbor to see how her light spreads across continents, how her wisdom reshapes empires. But for now, stay in this corridor of lamplight and silence. Let the glow of the scrolls surround you. Let the calm weight of 2,000 years of preserved knowledge rest gently on your shoulders. You are in the library of Alexandria, and it has never burned. You sit beside the open window of the library, watching the first light of dawn slide over the harbor. The city stretches awake below you, vendors unfolding awnings, fishermen calling softly, gulls carving circles through the pale sky. The scroll in your hands glows faintly where the sun touches it. Ink shimmers like fresh water. For a moment, you listen. No shouting, no clash of weapons, only the ordinary music of a city that believes knowledge is its truest defense. Somewhere deep in the complex, a bronze bell rings, signaling morning study. The air smells of warm bread and lamp oil. You rise and walk through the long colonnade. Light pours between the pillars, dust drifting in calm spirals. Every surface seems to hum with quiet purpose. Desks, ink pots, half-rolled maps. A young scholar greets you and opens a door onto the courtyard where students gather around a fountain. Its water trickles over carved stone lions. The sound is steady and grounding. They are reading today about the pulse of blood, the weight of air, the curve of the earth. Doctors trace diagrams on wax tablets. Mathematicians build small wooden models of planets in orbit. The world has not stood still overnight. It has learned a little more. In this timeline, the library's survival has changed everything slowly, like tide reshaping a shore. Its scholars no longer hide behind royal gates. Every port city wants a hall of its own, a smaller mirror of Alexandria. In Tyre, a library opens beside the shipyards. In Athens, another rises near the theatre, its shelves filled with translated Sanskrit and papyrus from the Nile. Each copy bears the same seal, a lamp surrounded by waves. Ships now carry more than cargo. They carry ideas. Sailors who once traded spices now bring home star charts and medical recipes. Even their children learn to read the constellations before they can tie a knot. Imagine the world beneath those stars. Along the Red Sea, caravans pause at night while teachers tell stories about how the moon pulls the water, how wind moves because of heat. They do not call these things magic anymore. They call them patterns, and patterns can be learned. Medicine begins to change too. The scrolls that describe the flow of blood and the healing of wounds are copied again and again, annotated by careful hands. In small stone clinics near the river, midwives learn from the same texts as scholars. They wash their tools in boiled water, a ritual of cleanliness that saves countless lives, centuries before anyone names the invisible reason why. The hum of knowledge spreads outward, gentle but constant. In temples once reserved for worship, quiet classrooms appear. Priests still chant hymns, but between verses, they teach arithmetic. Philosophy and faith walk side by side, neither afraid of the other. At night, the streets of Alexandria glow with small clay lamps. Students sit on rooftops reading aloud to stay awake. From the docks, you can see hundreds of points of light scattered across the hillside, as if the stars have fallen to earth. The sea mirrors them perfectly. Above and below, constellations tremble on the water. Years turn, measured not by kings, but by discoveries. Eratosthenes' apprentices refine his maps. One draws coastlines of distant lands described by Indian merchants. Another builds a brass ring that can track the solstice. A physician distills a new tincture from willow bark to ease fevers. A poet sets these marvels to verse so that farmers, sailors, and children will remember them easily. And through it all, the library listens. It gathers copies of every scroll produced in its name, sending new caravans north and east. A road forms across the Sinai, paved smooth so the camels carrying bundles of papyrus will not stumble. The desert becomes a river of ideas flowing toward Mesopotamia. Far beyond, on the shores of the Indus, a second great archive rises. Its foundation stones are laid with ceremony. The first shipment arrives from Alexandria, 1,000 scrolls wrapped in linen. When the crates open, the smell of sea salt and cedar drifts through the air. Children press close to see letters they cannot yet read. Soon they will. By the first century of this alternate era, the Mediterranean hums with study. Artisans carve small lenses for navigation, their glass polished so clear that sailors can see stars even when the horizon glows red. Music changes too. Flutes tuned by mathematics, rhythms measured like heartbeat and breath. Everything feels balanced, deliberate, peaceful. Imagine walking one evening through these streets. The day's warmth still clings to the stone. Someone plays a lute near a doorway. From an upper window comes the faint scratching of a quill. A voice recites lines from a new play about explorers sailing beyond the Pillars of Hercules. No one doubts they will return. Knowledge has become a compass stronger than fear. The library itself has grown. New wings stretch toward the harbor, tiled with lapis and marble. Gardens weave between them, filled with figs, pomegranates, and the scent of jasmine. Scholars stroll there at sunset, sharing notes, their robes brushing the leaves. The city built around them thrives on patience. You find yourself back inside the reading hall as night deepens. Scribes are still at work, but slower now. Candles shrink, shadows climb the walls. Outside, waves break in rhythmic hush against the quay. The lighthouse sends another sweep of gold across the dark water. You close your eyes and imagine the world beyond that beam. Far across the sea, people you will never meet are reading copies of the very scroll before you. The thought feels both small and infinite. You breathe in, you breathe out. The scent of papyrus and warm wax fills your lungs. Time itself seems to pause. The librarian walks past and nods kindly. "We will finish soon," she whispers, "but the light will stay." You smile because you believe her. This place no longer depends on walls or fireproof vaults. It lives wherever a mind chooses to learn. In the quiet that follows, you can almost hear the turning of the earth. A soft creak of timbers from a ship at anchor, the faint rustle of parchment settling on its shelf. All around you, knowledge sleeps lightly, waiting for morning. Rest there a while. Let the stillness wrap around you like linen in the warm night air. The library endures. The world keeps breathing. And dawn is only a few heartbeats away. The morning light settles gently over the roofs of Alexandria. From high above the harbor, the library gleams like a white shell cupped against the sea. Mist drifts through the colonnades and softens every edge until the marble seems to float. Inside, the day begins the same way it has for centuries, without haste. A bell sounds, low and warm, and the scholars gather beneath the dome. Their sandals whisper over the tiles. Someone opens a window. The scent of salt and jasmine slips inside. The city exhales, and the library breathes with it. Tables fill with scrolls, fresh ink, baskets of reeds cut from the Nile. One room hums with gentle conversation as mathematicians review a new formula for curved space. Another room is quiet except for the faint scratch of quills. They are copying poetry today. Lines about the color of dawn, the rhythm of the sea. In the courtyard, gardeners trim fig trees planted by the first librarians. Their leaves shimmer green and gold in the morning sun. A small canal brings water from the Nile, trickling under stone bridges before disappearing beneath the walls. That steady sound, water over stone, has become the heartbeat of the place. Near midday, a teacher leads a group of children through the Hall of Maps. They walk slowly, their hands clasped behind their backs, eyes wide at the painted world spread across the floor. He points to the stars of the southern sky, to a coastline drawn from memory. The children repeat the names like soft prayers. They do not yet understand that these maps are promises, that somewhere, beyond the edges of parchment, more knowledge waits. In the apothecary's wing, glass jars line the shelves, powders, herbs, seeds. The air smells of honey and cedar. A physician prepares a salve for wounds using vinegar and ground bark. An apprentice records every motion. When the mixture cools, it will be sealed with wax, and sent to healers in distant villages. Here, medicine is an act of writing as much as of curing. Outside, the streets grow bright. Merchants call softly to passers-by, their voices blending with the rhythm of waves. From the portico, you can see fishermen untangling their nets, sailors raising slender masts. The lighthouse gleams above them all, turning slowly like a patient eye. It has become a symbol, not of warning, but of welcome. Its flame guides minds home. As the heat builds, the library quiets again. Doors close to keep the cool air inside. Only the steady shuffle of parchment continues. A reader leans over a scroll and traces each letter with her fingertip, lips moving silently. Outside, cicadas begin their endless chant. Time feels suspended, stretched thin as silk between the sound of the insects and the scratch of her pen. Toward evening, the light changes. Gold slides into amber, then into the deep rose of sunset. Students climb the stairs to the roof garden where vines twist around carved pillars. They sit in small groups, speaking softly. Below them, the city glows in layers. First, the lamps of the harbor, then the torches along the walls, and finally, the constellation of tiny flames from 1,000 reading rooms. Each light a single thought, alive. The wind off the sea cools the skin. Someone begins to play a flute. Its notes spiral upward, carried on the breeze. For a while, no one speaks. They just listen to the music, to the sea, to the slow turning of the world. Later, inside the great hall, the lamps are trimmed. A few scholars remain, finishing the day's work. One writes a letter to a colleague in Athens, a report on a new device for measuring the stars. Another writes to his daughter, telling her that the moon tonight looks close enough to touch. Their words will join the others in the archive of correspondence, a room that smells of wax and salt and history. Midnight approaches. The library is nearly silent. Even the sea outside has grown still, as if listening. A guard walks the corridor with a small lamp, checking that every flame burns safely within its glass. He pauses to gaze at the rows of scrolls, the soft gleam of polished wood, the murals of gods and constellations. He has seen them every night for 40 years, yet they never look the same. He thinks, as many do, that the library is alive, not in the way of breathing things, but like the tide, an endless motion of remembering and forgetting, advancing and receding. He bows his head slightly before moving on. Down in the copyist hall, one candle still burns. An old man sits bent over his desk, rewriting a fragment of poetry that speaks of rivers and return. His hand trembles, but his eyes are clear. When he finishes, he blows gently to dry the ink, rolls the scroll, and seals it with a thread. He smiles, knowing that this small work will outlive him. Then he extinguishes the candle, leaving the room in perfect darkness, except for the faint reflection of moonlight on stone. Outside, the lighthouse flame turns once more toward the library. The beam sweeps through the open windows, touches the marble for an instant, and moves on. It looks almost like a heartbeat. The city sleeps beneath it, quiet, thoughtful, whole. No ash drifts on the wind, no smoke hides the stars, only the slow breath of the sea and the memory of words waiting to be read when morning comes. Morning unfolds like a quiet thought. Mist drifts in from the sea, turning the harbour into a pale mirror. The first sounds of the city are soft. The splash of oars, the creak of a cart, a child calling to a gull that circles the quay. Within the library's walls, lamps are still burning, their small flames trembling against the cool air. You walk through the marble entrance and feel the faint echo of centuries under your feet. The same corridors, the same scent of papyrus and dusted cedar. But something new hums beneath it all, a vibration too low to name. Somewhere in the workshops, the scholars are experimenting again. Beyond the hall of geometry lies a long chamber filled with models, bronze spheres, glass lenses, coiled wire made from hammered gold. A boy turns a handle on a small engine and smiles as a thin column of steam drifts upward. The wheel spins once, twice, then slows. It is a toy, nothing more, yet the air itself seems to listen. A teacher explains gently how heat becomes motion, how motion might one day move ships without sails. He speaks without excitement, only quiet certainty, as if describing the tide. The students nod, copying the diagrams with deliberate care. No one rushes. Discovery here is a form of prayer. In another room, astronomers are polishing a new lens. They take turns holding it to the light, marveling at how it bends the sun into a perfect circle. Through it, they can see a faint shadow moving across the disk. Something small, perhaps a moon of another planet. They make notes, and the notes join a scroll, and the scroll joins a shelf. Knowledge expands like the morning sky, one breath wider each day. Outside, the gardens have grown dense with herbs and flowering vines. Bees move lazily between blossoms. The air hums with their slow work. Children run along the paths, carrying slates covered with numbers. They pause by the fountain to test a new balance scale, laughing when it tips too far. Every mistake is welcomed, another chance to learn. At midday, the great doors of the library stand open. Citizens wander in freely now. Sailors, craftsmen, merchants returning from distant ports. They come to ask questions. How to build a safer mast, how to preserve olive oil, how to chart a straighter course by the stars. Scholars listen and answer patiently, drawing diagrams in the dust or pointing to scrolls that hold the needed words. Learning has left the classrooms. It lives in the marketplace. By afternoon, the air grows heavy and warm. In the sculpture hall, apprentices shape marble into delicate instruments. Sundials small enough to wear as pendants, globes etched with lines of latitude. The tapping of chisels forms a rhythm against the murmur of voices. Light filters through lattice windows, scattering across the floor in golden squares. Dust dances within each beam, slow and weightless. As evening approaches, a quiet procession moves through the western court. Musicians carry strange new instruments, pipes with sliding reeds, drums tuned by tensioned skins. They play as they walk, their melody rising like smoke. The music echoes through the halls, past the shelves, up the stairways. For a few moments, the entire building vibrates with harmony. The scholars stop writing, listening in reverence. To them, music is not entertainment, but mathematics made audible. Up on the roof garden, the astronomers have gathered again. Their instruments rest on carved pedestals, small brass arms pointing toward the fading sun. As dusk deepens, the first stars appear. They begin to trace them, whispering their names: Aldebaran, Sirius, Antares. Each spark in the sky finds its reflection in ink upon parchment. One man marks the path of a comet. Another measures the tilt of the earth. They speak softly, never raising their voices above the wind. When the moon rises, silver light spills across the harbor. The water glitters like a field of mirrors. A line of ships waits to depart with morning tide, their hulls heavy with scrolls bound for other lands. From up here, they look like sleeping animals, calm and certain. You walk among the observers, breathing the night air. Someone hands you a cup of cool water scented with mint. You drink slowly, the taste clean and bright. Below, the city's lamps bloom one by one. The library stands at its center, radiant but quiet, its windows glowing like a constellation anchored to the earth. Later, as the astronomers pack away their tools, a young student stays behind. She stares through a lens she built herself, following a cluster of stars that seem to pulse in rhythm. She whispers to herself that perhaps light travels like sound, rippling outward forever. Her teacher smiles nearby, hearing her but not interrupting. The thought will rest in her mind for years before it finds its shape. This is how discovery begins here, not in triumph, but in stillness. Down in the main hall, the copyists are finishing for the night. They roll the day's new manuscripts, tie them neatly, and stack them in baskets. A clerk marks each one with a small clay seal, a flame surrounded by water. It is the emblem of the library, fire and sea together, destruction and renewal bound as one. The head librarian walks through the aisles, checking each table. Her pace is unhurried. She stops to read a line or two from a poem left open on a desk, then gently closes it. Before leaving, she touches the doorframe, a simple ritual of gratitude. Outside, the hallway is cool and dim. Candles flicker within their glass shells. The shadows sway, but never break. In the courtyard, the night air smells of jasmine and wet stone. A thin mist drifts over the fountain. The librarian pauses there, listening to the water fall in small, even notes. She thinks of the generations who have walked these same paths, of how their footsteps have polished the marble smooth. Nothing here feels old. Everything feels ongoing. A bell rings from the harbor, deep and low. It means a ship is leaving early, riding the midnight tide. From the upper balcony, you can just see its sails catching the moonlight, ghostly white against the dark sea. On board are copies of the newest charts, letters to scholars in faraway places, and perhaps a few seeds from the garden packed carefully in clay pots. The library sends out knowledge the way a tree sends out pollen, quietly, constantly, certain that some will take root. As the ship disappears beyond the breakwater, the sound of the bell fades. Only the steady rhythm of waves remains. You lean against the balustrade and watch the horizon until your eyes blur. It feels as if the world itself is breathing in time with the sea. Inside, the last lamps are dimmed. The workshops fall silent. The small engine in the hall of models cools and stops, a thin ribbon of steam dissolving into the air. Everything rests, yet nothing ends. You wander once more through the corridors. The marble under your feet holds the day's warmth. In the far distance, someone is reciting verses to help them stay awake. The words drift towards you, soft and indistinct, like the memory of a dream already fading. When you reach the grand entrance, the doors are half open to the night. Beyond them lies the harbor, the lighthouse turning in its endless rhythm. You stand there for a while, feeling the cool breath of the sea on your face. Somewhere out there, across the water, other minds are awake, reading, thinking, dreaming. The library has become a horizon of its own, an idea too large for any single city to contain. You close your eyes and listen. Wind in the palm trees, footsteps fading along the quay. A single drop of water falling from the fountain into the basin below. The sound repeats, steady and eternal. When you open your eyes again, the marble gleams under moonlight. Nothing burns, nothing is lost. The library stands unchanged, a great heart of stillness at the center of a sleeping world. And the world, in turn, dreams of knowledge. Morning returns, as if it has always known the way. A pale band of gold gathers along the horizon, and the harbor answers with a shimmer. The lighthouse turns once, then once again, its flame steady as a heartbeat. In the library, doors open to the sea breeze, and the cool air moves through the halls like a kind thought. You walk past the Hall of Maps into a wing that few visitors find at first glance. Here, shelves hold not geographies or star tables, but drawings pinned to linen boards, studies of faces, angles of hands, patterns of shells found along the shore. Charcoal lines sit lightly on vellum, a record of careful looking. A teacher stands nearby with palms folded, saying nothing as students step close, step back, and learn to see. In this city, art and science are two sides of the same calm coin. A sculptor studies muscles, not for triumph, but for truth. A painter mixes pigments by measure, testing how much ochre and chalk will catch the afternoon light without glare. Scribes choose their letter forms the way builders choose arches, curves that can hold weight for centuries. In a narrow room lit from above, an old philosopher begins his day. He has no throne, no dais. He sits on a low stool facing a circle of listeners, all ages, all patient. He asks a small question. What does it mean to learn without end? And allows the room to fill with the quiet that follows. Silence is not emptiness here. Silence is the most honest ink. Down in the courtyard, the gardeners work without hurry. They prune vines away from the columns and sweep the paths of wind-blown petals. A small bed of herbs grows beneath a fig, mint, thyme, a plant whose leaves smell faintly of rain. When students pass, the gardeners offer a twig, a single sprig, a scent to carry through the day. The lesson is simple. The mind travels best when the senses walk with it. A new exhibit has been assembled in the Hall of Sound. Wooden pipes stand in a row, each cut to a different length. A scholar draws a bow across a thin string stretched over a resonant box. The note is soft at first, then fuller. Then it finds a tone that seems to enter the stones themselves. He explains that sound is measurement you can feel, numbers you can hear. Several visitors close their eyes. Their breathing slows to match the vibration. Later, in the workshop of lenses, apprentices polish glass with felt and ash. They speak little, glancing often toward a window where the sky has deepened to a clear blue. One holds up a finished lens. It makes a small, bright circle on a sheet of parchment. He moves it slowly and smiles when the circle sharpens, as if the light has decided to focus. Near him, a colleague inks thin lines across another lens to test how images curve at the edges. The tests are not dramatic, not sudden, not loud. They are the patient accumulation of truth. The city around the library imitates this gentleness. Shops open with low laughter and soft greetings. Boats slip from their moorings without spray or clamor. Children carry slates and tiny sand trays. They practice letters as they walk, pausing to draw a circle that becomes the moon, then a triangle that becomes a sail. Knowledge in Alexandria is not a tower to be climbed. It is a shoreline where one can wander and always find something new. Near midday, the Hall of Philosophy fills again. Today, they are reading old lines rescued from an island temple, a poem about the usefulness of doubt. Doubt, says the poem, is a harbor where ships take on supplies. To leave too quickly is to cross the sea with empty barrels. No one argues. They simply let the image settle, like silt in clear water. In the afternoon, you return to the wing of drawings. Students now sit before a long table of everyday objects. Clay cups, a coiled rope, a sprig of myrtle. Their task is to record not perfection, but relationship. How light moves from one surface to another, how shadow holds shape. A young woman pauses and studies the empty space between cup and rope. She shades the air itself, a small field of quiet. Her teacher nods. This too is knowledge. Across the hall, a physician kneels beside a large basin and floats petals on its surface. He taps the basin's rim and watches ripples expand, little rings colliding, combining, fading. He makes a note. A headache might be an echo. Gentler sound may cancel it. He hums, almost a prayer, and the petals gather near the center again. Toward evening, small groups climb to the roof. The astronomers do not hurry to instruments. They lean on the balustrade and talk about the day's small discoveries, the clarity of a lens, a new method for numbering shadows, a melody that matched the turning of the lighthouse flame. They are not triumphal. They are grateful. The first stars appear early, 1, 2, then a soft scattering like salt on a dark table. An apprentice opens a chest and lifts out a thin bronze armillary, its rings moving with a whisper. He spins it once, and it sings softly, a music you feel more than hear. A teacher points out a faint smear near the horizon, a cloud that is not a cloud. It has a name now, chosen carefully after many nights of looking. They speak the name aloud, and it feels right in the mouth, round and steady. Below, the city's evening voices rise and fall. Vendors fold their awnings. A child calls for someone to hurry home. A cat steps lightly along a wall and disappears into a courtyard. The day thins to thread, and the library gathers it gently, winds it neatly, and sets it where it belongs. Inside, lamps are trimmed. The hall of sound is quiet, except for a single note held long on a glass bowl, then allowed to fade. The hall of drawings smells faintly of charcoal and fresh linen. The hall of philosophy holds the last warmth of bodies and thoughts, both lingering at the same temperature. The head librarian walks her circuit, as she always does, though tonight she stops longer than usual at a small alcove few others notice. Within it stands a shelf of letters, thank you notes from fishermen who learned to mend nets without waste, from midwives whose hands became surer, from carpenters who built doors that would not warp in the heat. The letters are short, unadorned, almost shy. She reads 3 of them and smiles so quietly it scarcely moves her face. Then she closes her eyes and listens for the sea. Far away, thunder climbs the horizon. Its sound arrives long after the light, a slow drum beyond the desert. Someone closes the shutters against a breeze that smells like rain that will not reach the city. The library settles deeper into the night. It does not resist the darkness. It knows the stars need it. A messenger arrives breathless from the harbor with a small package wrapped in waxed cloth. Inside waits a book of new poems from an island you have only seen in maps. Verse shaped like sails, lines that bend into constellations. You and the librarian open it together. The ink is still fresh enough to shine. You take turns reading aloud, the words floating between you like lanterns on a quiet river. When the last page is turned, you return the book to its cloth, seal it gently, and mark its place in the ledger. Another voice added to the long conversation, another lamp along the road. Night deepens. From the roof, you watch the lighthouse turn again and again, its beam brushing the far edge of your vision. You reflect that everything meaningful in this city happens slowly. Light across water, sound along stone, ideas among people. Speed is for storms. The library prefers the pace of breath. Below, in the workshops, someone has left a small engine set to the gentlest of work, turning a wheel that winds a cord that raises and lowers a lamp's wick. With each small cycle, the flame brightens, softens, brightens again. The room looks as if it is breathing. It is only a trial, a proof of kindness. If a lamp can be kept at the most comfortable light without a hand to tend it, then a sick room might feel more like morning than a tunnel. The device will be tested again tomorrow, then shared with those who need it most. Near midnight, the philosopher brings a low stool to the threshold and sits where the colonnade meets the night. He faces the dark and listens, as if the city has something to say. When a student approaches, he gestures to the empty step beside him. They sit together without speaking for a long time. When at last the student asks a question, how will we know when we have learned enough? The philosopher answers with a gentle shake of his head. Enough is a word for harvest, he says. Learning is a word for seed. The student smiles, understanding a little, and not minding what she does not yet understand. They watch the stars and let the silence do its work. Inside, you pass once more through the wing of drawings. Someone has left a study half finished, a hand cradling a lamp, the flame sketched with only 3 strokes. The empty space around the hand has been shaded with extraordinary care. The drawing looks complete because the air is complete. You stand there longer than you expect, feeling how stillness can be precise. When you finally return to the entrance, the harbor is almost invisible. The night so clear, it becomes a kind of light of its own. The lighthouse flame turns, and for a moment the water brightens like a blade laid flat. Then it goes dark again, soft as breath. You stand just inside the doorway and let the quiet gather. The city sleeps. The library keeps watch. No pages curl from heat. No ceilings crack from neglect. No knowledge sinks into ash. Everything lives where it is loved. You close your eyes and listen to the smallest sounds. The wick of a lamp settling as it cools. The faintest tip of water meeting stone. Your own pulse echoing the measured turn of the light. This, you think, is the art Alexandria teaches best. How to hold a flame without burning. How to carry learning like water. How to move through the world without breaking it. When you open your eyes, the marble still glows with the memory of day. Somewhere, a guard clears his throat and starts a slow walk down the corridor. Somewhere, a tide pulls far out and returns, patient as ever. The night has not rushed, it has unfolded, and the library, quiet and whole, waits kindly for morning. Dawn begins like a whisper through reeds. The harbor lies silver and still. The masts of anchored ships reflected twice, once in the sea and once in the low clouds above. Within the city, light seeps through shutters and settles on tiled courtyards where dew gathers on figs and vines. The library wakes as it always does, not with noise, but with motion. Doors opening, sandals on stone, the soft murmur of greetings shared before words about study. In the workshops, the air smells faintly of ash and oil. The young scholars, children once chasing gulls through the portico, are now craftsmen of a gentler kind. They no longer chase discovery, they build comfort. A potter works at a wheel turned by a small steam kettle. Its sighing rhythm keeps the clay spinning just enough to shape the curve of a bowl. He watches the rotation, hands steady, mind unhurried. The sound of steam becomes his metronome. When he lifts the finished bowl from the wheel, it gleams with the wet light of morning. He writes a single line beneath the rim. The hand learns by breathing. Next door, 2 women test a lamp designed for study rooms. It burns olive oil drawn upward by thin strands of linen that dip, cool, and rise again. The flame remains even, neither too bright nor dim. They smile. The design will spare the scribes the strain of their eyes. They name it the steady star. In another chamber, a young man tunes a set of hollow bronze pipes arranged along a shallow trough of water. He lowers his ear to the rim and listens to the hum each makes when the water level changes. The tones shift like wind through reeds. He notes how certain frequencies calm the pulse. When he finds the gentlest one, he writes beside it, for healing. This is medicine by ear. Throughout the day, the library fills with such soft experiments. There are no announcements, no crowds gathered for unveiling, only the quiet curiosity of a city that has forgotten the difference between learning and living. Down the hall of copies, a girl no older than 14 threads sheets of thin papyrus into a small wooden frame. She dips a reed in ink, writes a line, then slides the sheet aside and starts another. Her father invented the frame so that scrolls need not be rolled and unrolled endlessly. Pages can now turn like gentle waves. They call it the folded record. When she finishes her set, she lays them flat to dry. In the years ahead, the world will call them books. Near noon, sunlight pours through the open ceiling of the garden court. Scholars rest there, eating fruit and bread. A boy pours water into a copper vessel set in the shade. The vessel cools itself by slow evaporation. The water remains cold. He grins, proud of the simplicity, though he cannot yet describe the law it obeys. Someone pats his shoulder and tells him, "Nature answers softly if you listen long enough." Later, in the Hall of Machines, apprentices tend to a model that lifts water from a low basin into an upper pool. It works on the same principle as breath. Pressure, release, draw, release. The sound it makes is like a heartbeat. Children from the school come to watch it run. They laugh each time the stream arcs into the air and catches the light. One of them whispers, "It rains inside." The master of the hall nods, "Yes." So that the gardens above may drink, the library has invented irrigation for its own roof. By afternoon, the city hums at a single pace. Every shop and courtyard carries an echo of the library's patience. You pass a baker using a tiny lens to judge the color of his crusts, a weaver adjusting thread tension with a device of pulleys modeled after anatomy charts, a painter tracing geometric shadows that follow the sun through the day. Learning has become as ordinary as breathing. No ceremony, no separation, only the steady rhythm of care. Inside the scriptorium, the air is cool and smells of parchment dust. Rows of scribes bend to their work. A new pigment, powdered malachite mixed with gum, gives the ink a muted green shimmer that soothes the eye. It's a small discovery, yet everyone who uses it feels calmer. They joke quietly that the library now writes in the color of rest. A bell rings, once for the hour, twice for gratitude. The scribes set down their pens and stretch their hands. Some step outside into the narrow lane where pots of basil hang from every sill. The wind carries a sound like low singing, students reciting theorems to rhythm. They're not competing, they're keeping time with thought. As twilight nears, the lamps of steady star design are lit one by one. Their flames remain upright even when the sea breeze moves through the open arches. Light pools across the floors, soft and unbroken. The marble takes on a gentle glow, as if knowledge itself had become visible. In the great hall, the day's inventions are quietly recorded. The self-cooling vessel, the page frame, the harmonic basin, the steady lamp. 4 small devices, each simple, each born from observation rather than ambition. The librarian writes their names in the register with a reed pen, seals the page with wax, and sighs. Outside, a dove lands on the ledge and coos, as if confirming the entry. Night settles slow as ink in water. The air cools. The smell of the sea drifts through the corridors. The workshops fall silent, except for a faint clicking from the water engine as it finishes its cycle and rests. Everywhere you walk, something gentle glows. The reflection of a flame on glass, a bowl holding the last warmth of day, the sheen of fresh parchment. You pause in the atrium where the old philosopher sits most evenings. He greets you with a nod, but keeps watching the darkness beyond the courtyard. The city grows quieter each year, he murmurs, not as complaint, but as marvel. It is learning to think without speaking. You sit beside him, and the silence between you feels like conversation. Above, the moon rises, brushing the roof tiles with silver. You can see the faint shadow of the water wheel turning in the garden, driven by its patient breath of steam. Somewhere, a scribe begins a new poem about hands that make light. His voice is low, almost lost in the wind. We built a heart of brass, and it learned to rest. We built a lamp, and it forgot to flicker. The philosopher smiles at the lines. Even poetry is an instrument, he says. It tunes what words cannot fix. The two of you sit until the lamps burn low, until the stars seem to lean closer over the city. Everywhere below, tiny inventions tick, hum, glow, breathe, each one modest, each one a thread in the same great weave. When you finally rise to leave, the library feels less like a building than like weather, something that moves through everything else, invisible but undeniable. Its inventions are not tools for power. They are gestures of kindness written into matter, a flame that stays steady, water that remembers to cool, machines that breathe instead of roar, ideas that do not conquer but accompany. You pass through the last doorway and into the open air. The lighthouse flame turns toward you, distant but familiar. The city sleeps under its patient light. You take one slow breath, and in that breath you feel the rhythm of every quiet hand that has built, copied, polished, tuned, or simply observed. Their work is the city's pulse. Their silence is its song. Nothing ends here. Nothing ever burns. The library of Alexandria endures, remade each day by those who learn in peace. And above it all, the moon keeps its even path, reflecting a world that has chosen stillness over fire. Morning arrives without urgency. A pale light rests on the tiled roofs, and the harbor holds its mirror-still shape beneath the lighthouse's measured turn. Streets open like pages, one by one, and the city reads itself into the day. Beyond the library's western wall, narrow lanes thread between smooth plastered houses. Doors face small courtyards where shade pools before the sun arrives. Here, the library's quiet inventions have taken root. Simple, durable, modest as clay. They give the homes a soft rhythm, the kind that matches breathing. In a shaded atrium, a steady star lamp glows at a low flame. Its wick remembers the night and never wavers. The light sits in the corner like a second window, steady as thought. Nearby, a small vessel cools itself by the same slow principle, used in the library's garden, water drawn to the surface and given back to the air, a kindness traded in silence. On a shelf rests the folded record, the page frame the library learned to love. Sheets sit flat and light, their margins clean, their edges aligned like calm water at a stone. When a page turns, it makes the sound of a reed brushing another reed. Words wait in rows that do not roll away. In the next courtyard, a shallow basin holds a circle of water. On its rim, the harmonic pipes lean like reeds at a river's edge. A fingertip to brass, a breath across a cut, and the basin answers with a tone that seems to gather the room into a single thought. The household uses it sparingly, once in the morning, once at night, a note to set the pace, a note to close the day. A little farther along, a small water wheel turns under a spill that falls from a guttered channel. It lifts a thread of water to a planter on the roof where herbs lean toward the sun. No one watches it. No one needs to. The machine has learned the city's patience. It works because water falls. It rests when the channel runs dry. No orders, no hurry. Streets carry the same softness. Doorways open to let the night's coolness travel through rooms, then close to keep the day's warmth from entering all at once. Shutters move in a rhythm older than clocks. Tilt, breathe, tilt, breathe. Alexandria has always been close to the sea. Now its houses have learned the tide. When the sun rises higher, the lanes gather a careful brightness. A steady star lamp is pinched to a glow barely visible, and yet its memory of flame stays intact for evening. A pot rests on an earthen stand whose hollow legs draw air across clay. The surface cools enough to save its contents from heat. On a low table, a folded record lies open to a gentle geometry. A circle nested inside a square resting inside a circle. Shapes that speak to one another without sound. These rooms are not workshops, they are not schools. They are households that have let learning cross the threshold and find the shape of sleeping and waking. The library's inventions live here like small stones placed along a path, not to signal, but to steady the step. At midday, the city grows bright and pale. In the quiet of an upper room, light comes through a lattice, turns to pattern, and slides across the floor at the pace of a shadow that knows where it is going. On the sill, a tiny lens rests in a ring of linen. It is not a tool for discovery today. It is a tool for softness, to turn glare into a wash, to make a space where eyes can rest and words can float without edges. Below, in a cool storage niche, jars with porous shoulders stand shoulder to shoulder. They hold water that has learned to stay comfortable. Beside them, a narrow shelf keeps folded records flat. Pages do not curl or clench. Ink holds its depth and does not shout. The house knows how to be quiet without being empty. In the early afternoon, a breeze moves down from the lighthouse and slips through the lanes. Curtains lift and settle. The harmonic basin is silent now. the air carries its last remembered tone. If anyone hums along, the hum is softer than dust on tile. When the day's heat pauses, the courtyards return to their favorite work, holding shade, trading fragrance. A planter releases the brief green of crushed leaves. Somewhere, a tiny wheel resumes. Guided by a trickle no one hears, the herbs on the roof lean into their own shadow and straighten again. The house itself seems to breathe. Near evening, the steady star lamps are coaxed awake. Their light arrives at the same level it left, without surprise. The folded record receives a new page, the binder's cord tied with a knot practiced into forgetfulness. Even the knot seems to prefer a shape that will be easy to untie when the page is needed again. In a corner by the door, a small cedar box holds thin sheets with careful marks, shopping lists, lines for a mixture of oil and crushed resin, recipes for remedies older than memory and cleaner than luck. The box smells like the library's copy hall, a hint of smoke and salt, a promise of ink. Outside, the city gathers its lamps. The lighthouse turns with the softness of certainty. Between its sweeps, the harbor darkens to velvet, then brightens to silk. House by house, window by window, Alexandria folds into night without a line out of place. The library's inventions do not announce themselves. They're too gentle for that. A basin that remembers coolness, a lamp that remembers a level of light, a page that remembers where the hand left off the day before. They teach rooms how to keep a promise. Near midnight, wind from the sea carries a salt calm through a lattice and across a floor where the last light rests like a cup half full. The harmonic basin wakes for a breath. A finger moves along the brass and leaves a tone so low, and even it sounds like the room itself. The tone fades, and the quiet that remains is not empty. It is a shape. It is a place to set thought down and let it sleep. In the lanes, footsteps thin to one pair, then none. A shutter fastens itself against an easing hinge. Olive oil sinks in its wick, rises again, learns again how to become light. The folded record closes with a flutter like wings returning to a perch. The city rests in layers, the lighthouse light above, the lamps in rooms below, the remembered tones and temperatures that hold their small courses in the dark. No device complains, none demand. Each does a single, kind thing and then becomes still. Outside the wall, the library breathes as the houses do. Its windows are a scatter of steady stars. Between the stacks, shadows lean and wait for morning. Nothing burns, not a page, not a wick, not the air itself. Even the night seems to agree. If there is a sound, it is the softest kind. The settling of clay after heat, the last drip from a channel to a trough, the sigh a page makes when it lies flat under its own light. The houses have learned the library's language, not words, but proportions, not decrees, but pacings. They keep that language through the night. Toward dawn, the lighthouse completes another slow turn. A single fish breaks the harbor surface and paints a circle that widens and then is gone. The wind wakes before the birds. It finds a lattice, a curtain, a channel, a flame, a page, a basin, a wheel. Everything it touches remembers its work, and the city answers without effort. The first courtyard opens to the first slant of light. The lamp dims but does not die. The basin smooths itself and offers a cool surface to the new day. On the low table, the folded record opens where the hand will return. Nothing searches. Nothing starts from the beginning. The house continues. In the lane, doors do the same, and shutters and windows and feet. Sandals collect dew and leave a darker path that soon evaporates. The smell that rises is of earth and oil and the faint memory of yesterday's tone. A lens on a sill gathers the first line of sun and lays it softly across a page. The letters accept it. They have never asked for more. Above the houses, the lighthouse steadies to day work, its flame still aflame, though the world is brighter now. The library opens its doors and lets the morning through. Pages turn, water climbs, tones settle, lamps decide their level and stay. Alexandria does not become new, it becomes itself, and the houses, the ones that breathe quietly, the ones that learn to keep a steady light, the ones that taught water how to rest, they carry the library, the way a shoreline carries the sea, without question, without end, just the soft rhythm of give and receive, of opening and closing, of holding and letting go. When the day finally stands up and stretches, the city is already ready for it. The rooms are already shaped to meet it. The inventions, if they can be called inventions at all, have turned into furniture, and the furniture into habit, and the habit into peace. Morning goes on. The harbour breathes. The lighthouse waits. The library remembers. The houses remember with it. And nothing, not light, not water, not a single page, hurries. The morning begins with a hush you can hear. Clouds drift in from the sea like folded cloth, their undersides silver and smooth. The lighthouse turns once, then slows, as if the day itself were a lamp dimmed to a softer setting. From the library's upper windows, the harbour looks like slate rubbed with a thumb. Inside, lamps are trimmed lower than usual. Light moves along the marble in wide, quiet bands. Somewhere in the copy hall, a shutter breathes and settles. A single drop touches the sill and makes a sound like a fingernail on parchment. Then another. Then the rhythm begins, slow at first, then steady. A music the city remembers without effort. The first rain strokes the roof tiles. It gathers in seams, finds channels, leans into gutters taught to guide rather than resist. The library listens. So do the houses. Nothing closes in panic. Everything allows. Down the western corridor, the air turns cool, almost sweet. A window is open 2 finger widths, and the rain's scent arrives. Clay, fig leaf, stone. Scribes pause, not from surprise, but to line their breathing with the sound. Ink darkens on the reed tips. Letters settle deeper into the page, as if glad for weight. You walk toward the garden court. Drops ring the fountain's basin. Small circles meeting older circles. A quiet congress of ripples. The fig tree lets the first fall pass through its leaves, then begins to cup the later ones. Each leaf a shallow bowl. When the weight is right, the leaf tips empty themselves with a single, careful motion. It looks like thought. It sounds like patience. Outside the library's doors, the lanes soften to a darker tone. Dust becomes a thin paste and then a smooth skin. Sandals make almost no sound on it, only the softest tap, as if they were touching the shadow of the earth instead of the earth itself. Shutters tilt to invite the diagonal rain without letting it bite. The city's angles have learned how to greet weather without conflict. Back inside, the steady star lamps hold their level. Their flames are small, unbothered, steady hearts inside glass. Pages turn more slowly, hands pause longer at the end of lines. The rain gives every sentence a margin wide enough for sleep. In the lens workshop, the apprentices bring their work to the open doorway. They hold the glass to the day and watch the rain blur into soft threads, each droplet becoming a line for the length of its fall. One apprentice moves the lens closer to the frame and the threads become pearls. Farther away, they become mist. No one names a principle. They let the lesson remain in the eyes. A narrow bell from the harbour sounds once. Its echo arrives through the rain as if wrapped in cloth. A ship's mast nods. Ropes darken and grow quiet. The lighthouse flame turns again, slower, kinder. By mid-morning, small rivulets find the library's garden channels. Water climbs the brick with the help of capillaries it cannot see and will never need to see. The little wheel under the eaves turns, not hurried, not idle. Herbs on the roof alter their angle by a finger's width, receiving and releasing as if they had practiced all winter for this one choreography. The harmonic basin in a side room answers the rain with a note low as the floor. Someone touches the pipe and lets the pitch slide until it sits exactly beneath the roof's soft patter. Two sounds, one room. The air rests between them like linen between folds. You step into the sculpture hall. Rain has darkened the world beyond the lattice. Light enters as a single sheet. Marble takes it gently, holding a glow without edge. Chisel marks made years ago become visible again where the stone drank too much summer and needed shade to remember its own coolness. Everything loosens a little, even the past. When the rain deepens, people move closer to doors and windows the way moths move toward lamplight. They do not speak. They watch the threads. They listen to the soft polyrhythm, the roof, the gutter, the fountain, the street, the harbour, the far desert receiving all what little it will. The city is a drum. Only the weather can play. At noon, the clouds lower and the library lowers with them. Lamps are invited to rise just a thumb's breadth. Flames agree. The scriptorium breathes in a single slow wave, like a sleeping chest under a woven blanket. Reeds return to ink. Pages welcome a darker hand. You wander to a narrow balcony under the eaves and lean against the damp stone. Rain ticks from the roof's lip in a straight, even fringe. Wind walks by on soft feet, not insisting on anything. Below, the harbour surface dimples end to end, a fabric stitched by invisible needles. No thread breaks, no seam pulls apart. Inside, a child in the map room traces the Nile with one forefinger and then holds that finger into the rain. She says nothing, but in her mind, the river and the droplet shake hands and exchange names. That is enough. Throughout the afternoon, Alexandria becomes a stove of gentle steam. Cool air moves through cool rooms. Warm air climbs where it is welcome. The self-cooling vessels sweat and give their breath back to the shelves. The folded pages do not curl. Ink keeps its posture. In a stairwell, a thin stream descends beside the steps, guided by a groove carved there for this purpose generations ago. The line of water writes its own script on the stone, a vertical sentence without words. Whoever made the groove understood that rain remembers roots. All the city needs to do is hum the tune. Later, the rain thins as if remembering some other appointment beyond the breakwater. Each drop pauses a little longer in the air before it decides to fall. A single beam of light finds the courtyard and draws a pale stripe across the fountain's lip. The stripe stays even when the cloud returns, a memory the stone decided to keep for an extra breath. In the apothecary wing, jars stand uncorked for a few minutes to accept the rain's coolness. A bundle of dried leaves grows darker by a shade and releases a fragrance like clean pages. A small note is made, store on wet days with shutters open. Remedies learn from weather too. No one claims it is science. No one claims it is not. As evening leans in, the city releases water the way it accepted it, without fuss. Runnels slow, then shine without motion, then become nothing. A last thin line drips from a fig leaf to a basin. The basin rings once, very softly, as if nodding. The lamps now do their other work. They do not replace the day. They remember it at a lower volume. Rooms glow like shells held to the ear. Pages are turned with damp fingertips that leave no mark. Reeds write a little rounder, a little slower, as if the hand has found kindness toward itself. You walk the long colonnade and watch the courtyard's floor dry in shapes. Here, a leaf prints its spine. There a sandal writes an oval. There a small pool chooses to remain where the stone dips inward, just enough to hold one more minute of the sky. The pattern looks like music that has not yet decided to become sound. Down in the harbor, the bell calls once for the lighthouse's sake. The flame sweep brightens the wet rooftops and the wet palms and the wet sea all at once. Every surface answers by being itself a little more. That is what rain teaches. When night takes its place, the city is cleaner, but unchanged. Nothing washed away that the city needed. Nothing remained that the city could not use. The library closes a handful of shutters and leaves the others open to hear the last small talk of drops in the gutters. In the lens room, a single bead of water clings to the edge of a glass and acts as a tiny world. Turn this way, it holds the lamp upside down. Turn that way, it holds a doorway. When it falls at last, it makes no sound at all. The apprentice who watched it breathes out, as if he'd been holding the drop the entire time. By midnight, the rain has gone to visit the inland fields. Its absence is another kind of sound. Shadows return to their favorite corners. The fountain resumes its old conversation with gravity, unaccompanied. Somewhere a page dries into perfect flatness, and forgets it was ever damp. The city sleeps without a cover because the sky has folded its cloth and laid it neatly along the horizon. The lighthouse flame keeps its measured turn. A ship loosens a rope with the care of fingers untying a memory. The harbour gives back the stars in pieces and then whole. Inside the library, night's cool moves along the floor like a tide that trusts itself. The copy hall smells faintly of stone washed with clean water. The harmonic basin holds nothing now but its own stillness, which is another kind of tone. You linger at the threshold and look across the stacks to the far wall, where nothing is written and everything is implied. The day has taught its lesson so quietly that no one needed to repeat it, that a city can learn the shape of weather, that a building can remember how to be soft. That knowledge can be a gutter as much as a scroll. Before you turn away, you listen once more. No patter, no drip, only the hush that remains when the world agrees on a slower pace. It is the exact sound a page makes when it decides to wait for morning. You close your eyes. Somewhere the last drop falls into earth that wanted it. Somewhere the last roof empties itself and becomes simply a roof again. Somewhere a leaf releases a small, precise pearl and is lighter by the weight of a thought. The library holds all of this the way it holds words, lightly, evenly, long enough to keep, gently enough to let go. And Alexandria, washed and breathing, turns his face towards sleep. Dawn arrives as a pale seam along the water. The night folds itself neatly and lays it on the horizon. Clouds thin to gauze. The lighthouse keeps its patient turn, not brighter, only surer. From the library's high windows, the harbour looks newly written. Lines clear, margins wide, ink still drying where the sea touched its edge. Air moves through the colonnades with the scent of rinsed earth. Stone holds a cool memory, then releases it, the way a page gives back a story after the reader has gone. A door is unlatched. Its sound is soft enough to be mistaken for breath. Somewhere in the copy hall, a wick leans toward its own smoke and forgets to rise. You step into the courtyard. The fig tree wears small glass beads where leaves meet the morning. They fall one by one into the fountain, a slow, precise counting the city has always known. Ripples meet the rim and return as smaller ripples, a kindness given back in circles. The herb beds look deeper green, as if they remembered a name they had been missing. Mint loosens an invisible thread of coolness into the air. Time keeps its shape. Jasmine is a quiet brightness at the garden's edge. The stone bench beside the path has dried to a pattern like a faded map. Archipelagos of light, seas of darker grain. Inside, lamps are pinched even lower. They are not needed, but they are allowed to stay. Steady witnesses to the turning of the day. The folded record on a nearby table lies perfectly flat. Rain taught it calm. A reed pen rests across the open page as a bridge waiting for footsteps. Down the western corridor, a window is opened with two careful fingers. Air slips through, cooler than speech. The shutters make a narrow lattice on the wall. Light laid into shadow, shadow into light. A gentle geometry older than any proof. The scriptorium stirs without hurry. Pages that had waited through the rain. receive words at a slower height. Ink behaves as if it has already learned patience. Hands pause longer at the ends of lines, like boats deciding not to leave the harbor just yet. In the lens room, apprentices bring yesterday's glass to the threshold. They tilt each piece toward the thinning cloud. Light passes cleanly now. The rain's blur is gone, but its softness remains in the eyes that watched it. One lens draws a small coin of brightness on parchment. Another smooths the edge of a shadow until it matches the silence under a fig leaf. No one names what they are doing. The light names itself. Along the inner walk, floor tiles hold faint, drying arcs where sandals passed in the storm. Each mark is a small story already forgetting its plot. A broom travels the corridor like a pen that chooses not to write. Dust gathers into gentle commas and then is gone. By the hour of first bread, the portico opens to citizens. They arrive as they always do, with questions folded like letters in the mind. How shall a roof shed water and keep its shadow? What measure of oil will feed a flame that reads but does not glare? Which herb remembers winter best when summer presses its hand too hard? Scholars answer without performance, drawing lines in the thin damp that remains on the stone. The answers look temporary and turn out not to be. The hall of sound receives the day as if it were another instrument. The bronze pipes set above a shallow basin have dried to a darker color, like a memory kept in shade. A fingertip finds the lowest tone and lets it float at floor height. A different hand adds a higher note, barely stronger than a moth's wing. They rest there together, not harmonizing, not disagreeing, parallel lines of air the ears can lean against. Up in the garden that roofs the great hall, a very small wheel continues its work. Rain left the channels generous. The wheel only corrects for sunlight. Water lifts to the planters in thin threads, no thicker than a thought. The herbs accept it and give back fragrance that never raises its voice. A visiting child stares at the wheel and whispers that it spins like a story that never ends. No one corrects her. The description is exact. As the sun climbs, the library chooses its brightness, the way a careful reader chooses pace. Shutters open halfway and then stop. Lamps are pinched to a bead and left alone. The marble breathes in light and lets it out again as coolness. If there is a sound, it is the faintest turning of a page several rooms away. Midday arrives with a silver edge. Sail masts in the harbor write thin verticals into the air. A gull stitches a diagonal between them and lands on the quay with the authority of a punctuation mark. The bell sounds once, a single word the city understands. Here, in the hall of drawings, students return to the table of ordinary objects. The robe, the cup, the sprig of myrtle. Rain changed them only slightly. A shadow deeper at the rope's twist, a clearer rim on the cup, a leaf whose edge holds a bead of light and will not let it fall until it decides to. One student shades the space between things more carefully than the things themselves. Her teacher nods and says nothing. The space is the work. Across the courtyard, the apothecary wing uncorks 3 jars for a moment and then restores their seals. It is enough. The room keeps the rain's promise without keeping it wet. A small note is added to a slender page, open to the day after rain, close before the sun remembers its heat. The handwriting is round and quiet. In the map room, the Nile glows as if it had been washed in the night. A small finger traces it from delta to cataract and back again. Another finger follows the coast from harbour to lighthouse, then out across a pale blue where no line is yet drawn. There is no impatience in the gesture. The pale blue is allowed to remain as it is. When the afternoon lowers itself into the city, shadows return to their preferred shapes. The fig tree throws a pattern across the fountain that looks like handwriting. The water reads it and moves on. Bee wings sound like brief pieces of silk, torn very carefully and then mended. The philosopher appears at the edge of the colonnade and sits on his usual stone. He faces the garden, not for answers, but for the question that sunlight asks when it meets leaf. A student waits nearby, attentive to nothing in particular, when at last a thought arrives. It arrives lightly enough to pass through both of them without resistance. Neither of them holds it. It remains as weather remains, present, unowned. Below the roof garden, a set of steady star lamps are cleaned and refilled. A hand wipes soot from glass with a cloth that learned rain last night. The flame, when tested, is quiet enough to hear. It remembers the level it kept in storm and chooses it again in sun. Constancy is a skill. The lamp has mastered it. Far down the corridor, a broom pauses where drops once fell from a broken gutter. The gutter was mended at dawn. The broom leaves the memory in place until it fades of its own accord. Work here does not hurry erasure. It prefers consent. Evening moves toward the city with a softness borrowed from morning. The lighthouse brightens by a finger's width. The harbour's skin grows dark and exact. Windows gather the day and lower it to a readable glow. Inside, the scriptorium closes 2 shutters and leaves one open. Air moves through in a line slim as a seam. Pages rise and settle by half a breath. A final word is written at the bottom of a column and underlined with a gesture that could be mistaken for gratitude. In the Hall of Machines, the model that lifts water from basin to bowl completes a long, slow cycle and rests. Its last drop hangs for the length of a heartbeat before it lets go. The drop falls, finds its circle, and becomes invisible. The room accepts the event without remark. Rain taught it how. You return to the courtyard. The fig tree is dry now, except at the very tips of 2 leaves that refuse to forget. They will surrender their beads at moonrise when the air is cool enough to carry them without loss. A small lizard crosses the warm stone and disappears into the garden wall at a perfect angle. Everything chooses ease over display. Night arrives with hinge-soft certainty. The library's lamps are raised 1 thumb and no more. The lighthouse turns exactly as it did before the rain, as it did during the rain, as it will after the next clear day. Constancy is not sameness. It is a rhythm kind enough to hold change. In the copy hall, a single page dries flat and whole. A reed is rinsed and laid beside it. The air smells faintly of clean stone and whispering linen. Somewhere, a bowl sings 1 brief note. and is silent. You pause at the threshold that looks toward the harbor. Between columns, the sea is a dark paragraph with a margin of light. A ship moves through it, like a sentence that already knows its ending. The bell does not ring. It does not need to. Before you turn back, you close your eyes and feel the day again as a sequence of touches. Cool stone against the palm of a hand, the rounded weight of a glass bead falling into water, a line of light laid across a page, a breath that matched the room's pitch for a moment, and then returned to itself. After the rain, the city did not hurry to become dry. It simply remembered how to be clear. The library did not hurry to become bright. It simply remembered how to hold light at a steady level. You open your eyes. The lamps are small constellations arranged by intention. The windows are softer versions of day. The courtyard is a quiet geometry of plant and stone and water agreeing on proportion. Nothing has been lost. Something has been learned. And all of it is ready to sleep. The lighthouse turns once more. The harbor accepts the line it draws and lets it fade. The night finds its exact size and settles over Alexandria without weight. Within the library, pages wait for morning, the way a tide waits for the moon. Between them, the silence is deep enough to rest in. You breathe in that silence, and it keeps its shape. After the rain, the light does not argue. It simply returns, lower, kinder, ready to be read. Night has taken its exact place. It does not press. It rests, like a dark cloth laid smoothly over the harbor. The lighthouse keeps its measured turn, a pulse too gentle to startle, too certain to forget. Inside the library, lamps have settled to the level they remember best. Flames are small and even, each one a held breath. Corridors hush to the soft arithmetic of footfalls, counting themselves down to zero. Ink cools, stone cools. The day folds itself and tucks the crease beneath the hours to come. From a narrow stair that turns like a thought, a small procession climbs towards the roof. No one speaks. They move with the care people use when they carry water or sleep. Wrapped in linen against the high night air, they bring nothing loud, only a lens in a cloth, a brass ring that knows the names of angles, a page bound to remember and forget at the same time. The roof opens like a bowl turned upward to drink. A low wall gathers the edge of sky. Beyond it, the city exhales once and becomes background. The harbor makes a sound like silk laid flat, then left alone. The lighthouse completes another turn. One by one, the stars take their proper seats. They do not arrive so much as become visible. A slow, patient unhiding. First a bright one near the horizon, then a grain scattered beside it, then a quiet chain that always looks like a sentence, halting halfway through, intending the rest for morning. The brass armillary is set upon a stone that remembers this weight. Its rings whisper when touched. The circle within the circle receives the idea of the sky and holds it lightly, as if the night will ask for it back at any moment and be obeyed. A linen cloth is folded twice and placed beneath a lens. Someone breathes on the glass and wipes it with the edge of the same cloth, not to polish brilliance into it, only to invite clarity that does not shine too hard. They begin as they always begin, not with the brightest star, but with the faintest one each eye can keep. It is an agreement, a ritual of humility. The night likes that. It moves closer by the width of a fig leaf. A line is drawn in the mind from the bright point near the sea to the quiet point above the city wall. Another line meets it in a careful angle. The angle is measured, then not written. They let it sit between them, lodge softly in the air like a breath that does not need to be owned. An apprentice lifts the lens and lowers it again. This sky requires very little help. A thin smudge becomes a flock. A flock becomes a river. The river does not move. It simply remembers that it was water once and agrees to be stone tonight. Someone turns the brass ring by a finger width. The ring answers with a sound so soft it is easy to mistake for a new star. Below, the library's lamps find the roof edge and stop. They do not climb. This is not their room. Across the harbour, a bell remains silent. Farther out, a ship makes a silence of its own, the silence a sail makes when it becomes the same temperature as the night. A gull dreams somewhere and forgets it immediately. They keep the vigil by not trying. Eyes rest, hands rest. The night does the work. When they do speak, it is in single words delivered to the space between them like carefully poured water. Fainter, steadier, east, yes. Then silence stitches the words to the fabric of the sky and smooths the seams. A page lies open on a flat stone. A reed waits beside it. It will be used if needed, and it is not needed yet. The sky writes itself first. Beneath the parapet, the city turns in tiny adjustments. A shutter secured against a soft clack. A courtyard lamp remembering the level it chose at dusk. A cat stepping into and out of a doorway with no opinion about either world. The philosopher who came without instrument or page keeps his eyes closed. He counts nothing. He measures nothing. He listens to the shape of looking. To him, the vigil is a way of aligning inner weather with outer weather until they are both simply weather. A thin breeze lifts the edge of the linen under the lens and lays it down again. The apprentice steadies it with two fingers that have learned not to press. The lens accepts the sky once more, and a star that was almost not there becomes quietly present. Someone names it, but the name is a breath, and the star keeps its own. They do not argue. Toward the east, a faint gladness begins, not light, not yet, but the feeling that light has put a hand on the shoulder of the horizon. They notice. They do not move. One of them raises a small device that measures time by letting sand forget where it was. The sand narrows itself, grain by grain, into the lower bulb. When it reaches the level a certain unspoken intuition has agreed upon, the device is turned, and forgetfulness begins again. A moth visits the lens and decides it is a moon. It circles and leaves. No one corrects it. Every creature has a right to a gentle mistaking. A thin line is written at last, not about a star, but about the air, steadier than last summer. The harbour held its breath for 3 turns of the light. The reed makes almost no sound. The ink dries to the shine of an eyelid. They let their heads rest against the low wall and follow a corridor of faint sparks that always looks like a road and never is. In another city, in another century, someone will say it is a galaxy, and they will be correct. Here now, it is a kindness the sky extends to tired eyes. Below, the fountain answers a question the pump no longer asks. Water finds water, accepts water, becomes water again. The sound climbs the stair like a thought that intends only to reassure. A distant cloud, too thin to name, crosses an invisible line and erases nothing. The night edits itself with a respect the day will understand. Another note, the small smear near the southern parapet persists. Not a flaw of glass, a flaw of attention. They smile at the honesty. It will be there tomorrow, whether or not it is written now. The philosopher opens his eyes. For a moment the stars seem very near, and then they seem exactly where they are. He prefers both truths and lets them sit side by side without touching. The lighthouse turns again. Its arc lays a long pale sentence across the harbour and underlines the last ship awake. The sentence fades of its own accord. No hand erases it. They lower the lens to rest on the cloth. The brass rings are turned to their sleeping positions. Not at zero, not at any boast of completion, simply to an angle that will be kind to the metal until morning. The page is closed. The reed is rinsed. The water used to rinse it is poured carefully into a crack between stones, where a plant no one planted is practicing how to be small and sufficient. They remain even after the instruments have been covered. It is part of the work to stay when there is nothing left to do. The sky appreciates that. It offers one more bright point where there had been none a moment before. The addition makes no demand. It is generous in the way quiet things are. A far gate somewhere in the city is opened and closed with the gentleness used for sleeping children. The sound arrives as a suggestion and is believed. When at last they rise, they do so without breaking the night. The stair receives their weight as it would receive leaves. In the corridor below, a lamp acknowledges their passage by remaining exactly what it has been all evening. They set the lens in its niche. They hang the cloth to remember its shape. They place the brass ring upon a hook that was made for it many years ago and has never wanted any other task. No one says good night. Night is already good. On the way to the scriptorium, they pass a window that frames a piece of harbour and one unimportant star. They do not stop. They allow themselves to have seen it without collecting it. In the copy hall, a page left open at dusk is closed with a palm that hovers a moment above it, the way one hovers a hand over a sleeping forehead to be sure of a steady warmth. The page agrees to rest. The palm withdraws. The philosopher returns his stool to its corner as if putting a thought away for later. He does not plan to return tomorrow. He accepts that he will. At the threshold to the courtyard, someone pauses. A grape leaf leans in the direction of the sea, and a drop caught at its tip refuses the law of gravity one breath longer than it should. Then it lets go. The drop finds stone and becomes a circle that pretends it was always there. The observer smiles without moving the mouth. The night has performed a perfect minor kindness. The lamps are lowered by a finger's width and then by another. The final setting is an answer the room gives itself. Nothing asks the question out loud. Down the long spine of the library, air carries the faint smell of clean ash and cool ink. A broom leans where a broom always leans. A door remains ajar by the measure that has kept it from creaking for a decade. Habits are the library's quiet machines. At the great entrance, the outer doors are pulled nearly closed and left with a breath of width, enough to let the sea speak a single syllable into the hall every few moments. It says the same syllable each time. It always sounds new. They stand together a little longer without the need to face the same direction. Each looks at a different piece of darkness and is content to be seen by the others without turning. The lighthouse passes once more. A thin stripe of light lays itself across their feet, then goes away. No one moves. When they part like pages, not torn, not even separated, simply placed where they belong for now. The stair returns them to the level of rooms where sleeping has already begun. A guard makes a quiet, useful circuit. A moth remembers the lamp and forgets again. Somewhere, a reed pen rolls half a finger's breadth and stops against a folded cloth. The roof keeps the vigil now without them. It will keep it for the rest of the night, with the same patience the sea gives to the shore, and the shore gives back. The stars need no witness. Witnessing them kindly is the library's habit, not their requirement. In your own room, the window is open exactly wide enough for the night to arrive without the wind. The bed holds the shape of a body that has not yet chosen to lie down. You sit and let the dark wash your eyes of names. You remember nothing you need to remember. You keep everything you need to keep. Across the city, a last lamp is lowered to its final quiet. The harbor answers with a slow, approving breath. The lighthouse turns and does not ask to be thanked. You lie back, above the ceiling, above the roof, above the quiet armillary sleeping on its stone. The sky continues, not eager, not distant, simply correct. It does not blink, it does not shout, it holds. Between one breath and the next, the difference between star and thought becomes very small. Both are points in a dark that is not empty. Both are steady when left alone. Both will be there when the eyelids choose their work. You choose yours. The library keeps the rest. Night remains, and so do you. Not awake, not absent, held at the level the lamps prefer, and the sea, and the sky. The vigil continues without needing your eyes. Sleep is the name of that permission. The city is asleep in full. No lamp is newly lit. No foot crosses a threshold. Only the sea moves, and even it moves by remembering. This is the hour when the world rehearses stillness. The harbor lies black and smooth, the masts drawn as faint graphite lines against the sky. Each one wavers, then steadies again, as if the air was sighing in its sleep. Far away, a single bell rolls inside itself and stops. The sound takes a long time to fade. as though distance itself were tired. Inside the library, air and stone are the same temperature. That is how the building knows it is night. Columns stand like tall thoughts that have forgotten their arguments. The floor holds the cool echo of every step that has ever passed across it and gives none of them back. A lamp at the end of the scriptorium burns the way an eyelid glows when eyes are closed against the sun. Its flame has become rounder, smaller, humbler. A single golden vowel whispered to darkness. The wick leans, corrects itself, and leans again. Even fire rests sometimes. The pages on the tables breathe imperceptibly. Fibers tighten, loosen, remember humidity, forget purpose. Ink beneath the surface glistens once when the lamp breathes and then decides to sleep too. Across the wide hall, a curtain moves one finger's width and stops halfway, caught between the thought to fall and the will to remain. Beyond the great doors, the courtyard is a bowl of night water. Lees shine with dew that never formed as rain. It arrived instead as the city's own exhalation. A cat steps through the pattern of vines and pauses mid-stride. Its pupils widen until they are mirrors for the stars. It lowers itself, folds in silence, and disappears. The hour between tides is when the library dreams, not of discovery, not of flame, but of order made from breathing. Scrolls murmur against one another like reeds in shallow water. Every corridor hums a single low note, a pitch so constant that hearing and silence trade places. A guard sits halfway down the stair, with his head against the wall. He is not asleep, but the kind of awake that forgets its name. His lamp has gone out, and he has not noticed. The moonlight from the high slit above him is enough. It moves down the steps in measured rectangles, counting time by how far it reaches. Far below, the water engine that feeds the gardens releases its last sigh of the night. A thin trickle continues through its throat, the voice of metal cooling. When it stops, the silence folds back around it perfectly, like cloth laid flat after being lifted only an inch. Outside, the tide hesitates. For a moment, the sea neither advances nor retreats. The line between wet and dry holds its breath, and a wave, small as a heartbeat, chooses forward. The decision is so slight that only the stones feel it. The lighthouse completes its slow revolution. The light crosses the harbour, touches the library's roof, slides across the fig tree in the courtyard, and moves on. No eye sees the full sweep. That is how the city shares its light evenly, a moment for each surface, then release. Inside, a page left open earlier curls inward, its edge lifting just enough to make a faint whisper. Another page answers from 2 tables away, a dialogue without language. Somewhere in the archives, a door adjusts to the cool and closes itself by half a breath. No latch clicks. The air is its hinge. In the astronomer's chamber, the instruments sleep under cloth. The brass ring feels the faint tremor of cooling metal, as if remembering the touch of hands. One screw turns a fraction, all on its own, aligning with the patience of stars. A mouse travels the length of the wall, its tiny feet drumming a pattern older than rhythm. It stops beside a crumb from the guard's pocket, noses it once, decides later, moves on. Even hunger waits in this hour. The philosopher's stool stands empty. A curl of parchment lies beside it, blank except for one small mark near the corner, a dot made perhaps by accident, perhaps as a promise to continue. Dust floats around it in slow orbits. For a second, the mark looks like a star seen through distance, and then like nothing at all. The harbor breathes again. The tide has turned. It begins its return. The water against the quay is low speech, words repeating themselves, until meaning softens into comfort. That sound enters the library through cracks made deliberately long ago. The architects knew that silence, left unchecked, becomes too heavy. A narrow breeze follows the sound. It touches lamps, scrolls, stone. Each answers in its own way. Flame with a nod, paper with a sigh, stone with the faintest coolness. Together, they make a chord only the night understands. In an upper gallery, moonlight crosses a mosaic of constellations. Each small tile reflects one drop of the sky. The reflection moves a little, so slowly that a casual eye would call it still. But the mosaic is tracking the heavens, grain by grain, exactly as designed. The city keeps time with the stars even when no one looks. Back in the courtyard, dew thickens. A drop slides somewhere far beyond the harbor. The horizon takes its first shallow breath. The dark does not end. It thins. Black becomes blue. Blue becomes ash. And the ash waits to remember gold. The tide has finished its turn. Water presses once against the quay, decides it is enough, and settles. Boats rock with the memory of motion. Ropes stretch, then sigh. The bell does not ring, it listens. Inside the library, shadows are tall but fragile. Each one carries a trace of the night that made it. The columns blush with the smallest grey. Dust in the high air glows before it is visible. A single lamp still burns in the scriptorium. Its wick bends toward rest. When the flame goes out, the room accepts the dimming as a kindness. Pages that have slept all night begin to breathe again. Fibers loosen. Letters lift a little closer to the light they were written for. No hand turns them. The air does. From the courtyard, the sound of a single drop, dew, not rain, finding stone. It rings once, the smallest note in the city's long song. The fig tree opens its leaves. They shine briefly, then become ordinary green. A door unlatches. Its hinge does not creak. It exhales. A caretaker steps through, carrying a bowl of clear water and a cloth. He wipes the stone bench, not because it is dirty, but because he likes to begin the day with completion. When he finishes, the bowl reflects the first true color of morning. The harbor brightens by degrees. Fish flicker just below the surface, each a line of silver writing that erases itself. Farther out, a sail lifts. Its fabric drinks the pale gold without comment. The lighthouse flame softens, trading brilliance for memory. It has kept the night. Now it keeps quiet. Inside the library, lamps are trimmed one by one. Some are blown out with a whisper. Some left to fade on their own. Smoke curls upward, draws a single spiral, and vanishes near the roof beams. The smell is faint honey and ink. A reed pen is lifted from its cloth. Its tip is examined, found perfect, returned to its place. A page is opened to the mark left yesterday. Not at the beginning, not at the end, exactly where thought paused. Soon, a line will continue it, but not yet. There is time enough for silence to stretch once more. In the garden above, herbs lean east. They know. Moisture on their leaves turns to fragrance. Mint first, then thyme, then basil, a soft chorus beneath the sky. Bees, half dreaming, test their wings without leaving. Even they respect the slow pace of dawn. The first rays reach the mosaic floor of the astronomy room. Stars made of colored glass begin to trade their borrowed light for the real one pouring in. They do it gracefully, without jealousy. The mosaic knows night was its teacher, day its pupil. In the apothecary, jars glow like captured fruit. The powders inside them turn rose, then amber, then settle into calm. A window opens to let the smell of wet stone in. The physician writes a small note. Morning light, gentle medicine. He leaves the note unsigned. The light knows whose hand it was. Beyond the library walls, the city wakes as a ripple, not a wave. Bread ovens breathe. Cloth is shaken from windows. Footsteps find the same stones they have always found. No shout, no clatter, only beginnings. Inside, the philosopher returns to his stool. He does not speak. He looks toward the courtyard where sunlight pools at the base of the fig tree. After a long while, he smiles in the direction of the light, as if answering a question the dark had been kind enough to ask. The scribe lifts a pen and begins. The first word of the day is small. The second is slower. By the third, the page glows faintly beneath her hand. She writes as though continuing a sentence the rain began days ago. Her breath keeps the rhythm. When she pauses, she listens and hears the sea agreeing with her measure. The library, the houses, the harbour, everything breathes in time again. Steam from a kettle joins the air, meets a shaft of sun, turns invisible. Nothing lingers longer than it should. Nothing leaves before it's ready. Soon the city will be full again. Steps, voices, laughter, questions. But not yet. This is the first hour. The quiet seam between night and day, when knowledge still wears the texture of sleep. If you listen carefully, you can hear the world taking its first true breath. Not loud, not proud, just certain. The same breath that moved through the library's corridors, through pages and lamps and gentle machines, moves through you now. It says, begin again, but slowly. The sun reaches the highest shelves. Gold touches the spines of every record. The letters answer by shining once, and then settling back into calm. A breeze passes through the open doors, gathers the smell of ink, oil, and fig leaf, and carries it to the sea. The lighthouse turns one final time before sleep. The harbour sparkles. The city opens its eyes. Within its heart, the library stands as it always has, not triumphant, not hidden, simply awake. Its walls are warm now. Its silence has shape. It remembers everything and asks for nothing. You breathe once more. Feel the weight of your body ease into the bed, the pulse steady, the mind quiet. The library's calm belongs to you now. The light expands, fills every corner, and rests.